You can't change what you eat without knowing why you eat. And many of us find ourselves looking for food when we're not hungry. And this is why many of us struggle with our weight. In this video, I'm going to help you identify what triggers might be leading to your eating. And at the end, I'm going to share the strategies that I share with my clients as a registered dietitian to help avoid this. If you're new here, I'm Maria. Welcome to the channel. Now, believe me when I say this, but I'm a dietitian and I find myself eating a lot even when I'm not hungry. I turn to food when I'm stressed, happy, bored, or even sometimes just trying to relax. And this is a very human reality. If we could all eat when we are hungry and stop when we are full, we wouldn't have many of the health issues that we have today. But food has many psychological ties for all of us. And knowing your own individual reason for eating is essential if you're hoping to make changes to the way that you eat. So we have a few different types of hunger that can trigger eating, but they can be very broadly categorized into your physical hunger, which is the true hunger that you feel in your stomach, or cravings, sometimes known as your head and your heart hunger. So physical hunger is that naturally occurring hunger that happens when you don't eat or you skip a meal, and it creeps up slowly. But cravings are very different from actual true hunger, and I tell my clients this all of the time. There is a clear distinction between the two. The biggest distinction that I will make is that cravings tend to be more urgent, like an intense desire for a specific food that pops up, where true hunger is a very slow process, where you should be satisfied by any food. If someone is truly hungry and you offered them a really plain, boring, stale cracker or a raw vegetable, they would likely eat it. But if it was a craving that they were experiencing, like a craving for something sweet or for chocolate, they're more likely to pass on this, as they only want that specific food that they desire. So there is a very clear distinction between the two. And now that's not to say that you can't be hungry whilst also having a craving. There can be an overlap, but sometimes they are singular. And we just need to figure out if we're having a craving or if we're really just hungry. So physical hunger, it will often occur if you're late for a meal or if you've missed a meal. Physical hunger can also occur if you are not eating balanced meals. They are not going to be substantial enough to give you the proper nourishment that you need. Or it could be that you didn't sleep well, so your body is seeking more energy from food. Or maybe you did a lot of exercise the day before, or it's coming up to that time of the month, and your body physically needs more energy or more calories at this time. Now, I'm going to pause here and ask that if you're enjoying the video so far, I would really appreciate it if you hit the red subscribe button below. It really helps support my channel. And if you're looking for healthy, high protein recipe ideas, make sure to follow me over on Instagram. But then we have our cravings, or our head and our heart hunger. And these are the things that cause us to eat despite not feeling hungry. And they can generally be divided into three main categories. And first up, we have environmental triggers. These are caused by seeing or smelling food, and in some cases, even just hearing food being cooked. Good examples of these are walking into a supermarket and smelling baked goods, or walking past a takeaway and suddenly having cravings for those foods even though you haven't thought about them in a really long time. Television adverts or even a scroll on social media is another really good example, because we're often being exposed to foods that are advertised in a way that makes them look incredible. Now, in some situations, we can control our environment, like not having a cookie jar up on the counter in plain sight, for example. But sometimes, like in a staff canteen, we can't. Then we have emotional triggers. Some people find that feeling happy, sad, or even frustrated can trigger eating. And there are several reasons for this, but we know that biologically, food is soothing, and it's a natural mood enhancer, which is why food is so often used by humans when mood is low. Then we have social triggers, which can be more difficult to manage because they're influenced by those around you. An example of this would be somebody offering you a cake that they have baked, or being given food as a gift, even attending social events or gatherings and being encouraged to help yourself to more food. In these situations, it can seem rude to turn food down, making it a very difficult trigger to avoid. And some triggers may also cross over between categories, like having food brought in by colleagues at work would be an example of both a social and an environmental trigger. And this is not even an exclusive list. Another big one, and one that I have personally found the hardest to break out of, is habitual eating, or eating out of habit. So as a child, I was always told to clear my plate, and that is now still ingrained in me. If I'm full after a meal, but there is still food on my plate, I'll still really want to finish it. I also love something sweet after dinner, because growing up, I was very lucky that my mom nearly always had freshly baked goods made for us after we'd finished eating our main meal. So I love to have something sweet here, even though I'm not physically hungry because I've just eaten dinner. but it's a habit that I've always had, and habits can be very difficult to break. And one last hunger that I want to chat about is taste hunger. And this occurs a lot when I see people that are dieting or restricting food. So there are 5 main tastes. We have sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. And many of us will need an element of all of these tastes most days. And if you embark on an extreme diet, like a juice cleanse, for example, it can make you feel very deprived and never fully satisfied. I'm a big advocate for an all foods fit approach, and I believe that we can still enjoy our favourite foods when we're trying to lose weight or improve our health, as long as we are mindful of portion control. I sometimes have patients in hospital and they have to follow a full fluid or a liquid diet for a period of time. They'll often tell me that by the end of it, all they want is a satisfying crunch, whatever it may come from. Right, so now that we have hopefully identified our triggers, which is the first most important step, I want you to write them down or even comment below this video and tell me what your triggers are. But now we're going to come up with an action plan to help navigate around these triggers. And I will be brutally honest here, there is no way to completely avoid cravings ever happening again, because they are part of being human. But there are ways, very healthy, balanced and empowering ways, for you to know what to do when you have them. Because sometimes the answer is yes, go and indulge in your craving. But sometimes the answer is no, today I don't need to give in to this craving today. And maybe there's something else that can satisfy me in this moment. That doesn't involve food. But it's learning, how do we make the healthful, right choice in that moment of time? Now, number 1, the first thing that you need to do is manage your physical hunger. Because when your physical hunger is out of control or very high, it becomes even harder to manage your head hunger or any other type of hunger. For example, when you walk into a shop, you are immediately exposed to environmental triggers. The baked croissants that they have straight away the minute you walk into Lidl. And if you were seeing and smelling all of these delicious foods whilst also being completely ravenous and hungry, it's going to make it a lot more difficult to avoid buying these extra foods. There is a very high chance that you're going to walk out with more food than you intended to. It's human nature. So make sure that you are eating enough and that the foods and meals and snacks that you're eating are balanced. Make sure you're eating enough protein and you're filling up on fibre. When anybody lets themselves get too hungry, all of their good intentions will go out the window, no matter how much willpower you think you might have. And a regular eating pattern with high quality, nutritious food is king here. Don't overlook this step. It's boring, it's basic, but it works. Now, the next tactic that I'm going to share is for tackling that habitual hunger. And when you're trying to change a habit, like that sweet food you always have after dinner, you can't just go cold turkey. The best way to break an old habit is to replace it with a new one. So for me, for example, as I mentioned, I always love some chocolate or something like that after my dinner. So for a couple of weeks, I told myself that what I was going to do as soon as I'd finished my dinner was set a timer for 15 minutes on my phone and do the wash up. Get it all done. This would distract me, and by the 15-minute timer had gone off, I would either want to continue finishing the wash up if I wasn't yet done, but that intense desire for that craving had also passed. So having distractions are great for this habitual hunger. Now, that's not to say that I now never have something sweet after my dinner, but I don't have to do it all of the time because I have now broken that habit. Next, we can do some form of environmental control, because as the quote goes, if something is out of sight, it's often also out of mind. But we don't have to go to extremes and throw out everything from our cupboards. A common thing my clients will say is that what they struggle with is those biscuits or those crisps that they have in the evening when they're sitting on the couch watching television. So a common response, and it does feel natural to say, is that you're just going to remove all of these foods from the house. And this can be a specific tool for some people. So if you do find that helpful, go for it. But in the grand scheme of things, I like to be realistic with my clients, and you are potentially going to be exposed to these trigger foods again. And there can be something empowering about knowing that they're in the house and not having to reach for them. What you don't want to happen is removing them completely, and then if you're at a friend's house or a social gathering and you're presented with the food that you've removed, that you lose all control and then overeat on it. So I do always advocate for some environmental redesign. That can be moving the chocolates and the biscuits to the back cupboard in the corner where you don't see them, so you don't always think of them unless you go looking for them. Don't have a tin of biscuits right beside the kettle, and instead have your fruit basket or some healthy snacks that are at eye level. The next thing that you want to try and do is to be prepared. Keep healthy snacks on hand. So when the time comes that you do find yourself wanting something and experiencing cravings, you have a good option to lean towards. And a lot of the time, unnecessarily snacking and cravings are a pattern, and we can preempt it happening. Like a very common one is that 4 to 5 p.m. slump. And if you have balanced snacks on hand that you can grab, it's going to be a lot less tempting to grab whatever baked goods your colleague brought in that day. But if you find that it's a regular pattern and it's happening a lot, it might mean re-looking at your meals. Maybe you need to be eating a bigger breakfast or a bigger lunch. And having these strategies in place can really help you with reaching your goals. Something that I do if I know I'm going to a social gathering or a friend's house and I know there's going to be lots of appetizers, is I do make sure that I have a proper meal first so that when I do go there, I'm not hungry. I know there's going to be loads of crisps and cheese and crackers being passed around. And of course, I'm only human, I will still have some. But I'm not going to be having so much that I need it to fill me up and fill my hunger levels. I'll just have a few to satisfy that taste craving. And I'll be able to do so in a controlled way because I've already had my balanced meal before leaving. Similarly, if I have a work party where I know there's going to be a big cake, I'll just make sure that I do have my lunch first. So I have my lunch and then I can have a small slice of cake. I'm not going in there starving trying to have all the cakes and all the cookies. And a couple of years ago, I used to have a job where I had to do very long drives. And making sure that I had preempted the possibility of there not being healthy snacks on the road, I would bring some with me. So some thinking ahead and preparation can be very helpful. Now my next tip is for taste hunger. And I struggle with this one a lot because anyone that knows me knows that I love chocolate and I love sweet stuff. But my advice here is not to overly restrict any certain food or taste. It's only going to make you want something more. So in the past, whenever I had been trying to maybe eat a little bit better for a number of weeks, I would still make sure that in my daily diet, I would still include some foods that I really enjoyed because that was the only way I was ever going to be able to sustain eating well. Because again, an all food fits approach really can work. Now, a little rule or guideline that I share with my clients for when they do really want that chocolate or something sweet is what I call the 2 chocolate rule. But you can apply this to whatever taste you're craving. It doesn't necessarily have to be for chocolate. But rule number 1 is that you don't eat it when you're physically hungry. If you're physically hungry, have a satisfying, balanced meal and wait 20 minutes. Now, if then, after the 20 minutes have passed, you still want some chocolate, that's fine. Go and have your chocolate. But you need to follow rule number 2. Rule number 2 is don't eat the chocolate straight from the packet. Have an individual bar or a small slice of cake or take 1 to 2 biscuits, whatever it is that you want, and then move away to another room. This will give you a little buffer against impulse eating. Now eat your chocolate, but eat it mindfully. Enjoy it and savor it. And think about how you're going to be looking forward to having more again tomorrow because it's not off limits. And if your physical hunger need has been met, you won't necessarily need a massive slice of cake. Maybe just have a small portion to satisfy that taste hunger because you want to try that food. Sit down, savor it, and enjoy every bite. Now next up, I want you to really practice mindful eating. So say you grab a snack, you go on your couch and you turn on the TV and you're watching Netflix. Guilty. You are just munching away and then all of a sudden you realize that the whole packet of crisps or biscuits is gone. And you're like, damn, how did I even do that? And it's because you're kind of mindlessly doing this chewing motion because your brain is elsewhere. And that could be that either you are watching TV or you're emailing at your desk while you're eating. And then we're like, oh God, I only have 1 bite left. Where did my lunch go? And you don't even feel like you've eaten. But do try to take 10 minutes. Give yourself that time out of your day to sit down and enjoy your meal in peace and pay attention to everything about your meal. Pay attention to how you're moving the food with your fork from the plate to your mouth. Pay attention to the colors, to the textures, to the smell, and understand how every bite takes you that 1 step further to feeling full and satisfied. I know for some people this all sounds a little silly or a bit grey and vague, but many of these mindful eating techniques have really transformed some of my clients and even my own relationship with food. And practicing mindful eating can help you better control your portion sizes. It will help you eat in a way that feels good for you and your body. It can help you avoid overeating or eating to that point of discomfort. And it is a very empowering process, but it does take a little bit of time. And trust me, it's a lot easier than focusing on counting all your calories or macro tracking. Because a lot of the time we have actually suppressed the cues that we should be listening to from our body telling us when we're hungry and when we're feeling full. Now the next tip is simply recognizing the power of a pause. I know for many of us, we've had that moment where maybe we are aware of how much we are eating when we're sitting on the couch or whatever, but you maybe just kind of feel like you're in a trance. You said you were only going to have 1 more, but then you have another and you just can't seem to stop. So if you feel you're in this cycle, what I would encourage you to do is stop and take a pause and take a big deep breath. There is so much power in a pause and it can help you snap out of that trance. I like to use the acronym HALT. So stop and think, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? Think, what is this food really doing for you? And is it what you need in that moment, or is it something else that you need? It can also be useful to affirm yourself. Know that you are capable of saying no to food, and know that you're capable of not letting that food have power over you. And this brings me on to my next tip, and there is a lot to unpack here. And what I want you to do is try and label that emotion. There is something about labeling an emotion that helps us take control of it. So before you get a craving, or while you're having a craving, say to yourself what it is that you're truly feeling. Are you feeling stressed? Ask yourself, how will eating that food make you feel? And look, there are times when it may help, but more than likely it is not going to solve the issue, and it will only solve it in the short term. It might solve your boredom or your loneliness in that moment. It's not going to help with the deeper issue. And using food to soothe emotions, it's not the worst thing in the world if you're only doing it on occasion. It's very human. But if it's becoming a crutch that you rely on, and then it is starting to compromise your overall health, it might be starting to do more damage than good. And this is where you need to work on building in new coping strategies to help you deal with difficult emotions. I like to think of it as having a toolbox, and you should have different tools to help you manage that emotion, and food should only be one of them that you don't necessarily need to use all of the time. This could be things like meditation, journaling, a friend that you speak to, somebody that you ring. It could be going to see a therapist. And some of these issues, they are not easy to fix. So it might be that you need to go and seek support. It could be speaking to a professional therapist, or even a dietitian can help you understand the connection between food and your emotions. Now, hopefully this video has been helpful. And if there is one thing that I want you to take away, I want you to know that the answer isn't always going to be yes, give in and indulge in your cravings, nor is it always going to be no, I shouldn't have this food because it's bad for me. You want that flexibility when it comes to food and decision making for your health. If you find your cravings are very extreme and maybe leading into binge eating territory, I recommend you watching this video here. I'll leave it linked below. And if you enjoyed this video, you would also enjoy my protein video, because eating enough protein can really help control your cravings too. But thank you very much for watching. As a thank you for getting all the way to the end of this video, I have a free recipe ebook which I've linked down below in the description box for you. Stay happy and healthy, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching.